extreme heat can, in fact, fry an egg on a sidewalk. Let's get it going. Hey everybody, welcome into another episode of Old Man Brad. This week we are going to jump into the Summer of Tubi. So this is a series that I used to do over on YouTube, but I am now bringing it over here to the podcast. This is something that comes out at the end of the month, and I recap my highlights and my lowlights for what I watched on Tubi this past month. Usually it is month to month, but this one is the last 2 months because I did a fun little thing called Summer of Tubi for June and July, and basically there were no rules to Summer of Tubi. It was just, what movies have you watched on Tubi the past 2 months? Straightforward, that's what it is. And I watched 45 films for the Summer of Tubi, and we will dig into those. I'm going to give my bottom 5 and my top 10. Figured since we got 45, I can do a few more. But before we dive into those, thanks to everybody who participated in the Summer of Tubi. And now we are rolling over to our 100 Days of Horror, which Drew and I just talked about last episode. Now make sure you follow along to our horror watches. Follow Drew over at Real Feels Pod and our friend Nerdjavert over at Seen That Review. He is also participating, and we are having a blast watching horror movies leading up to Halloween. Follow me online at Tubi Tuesday on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it these days. Or you can just follow Old Man Brad over on Instagram and Threads, where I post a lot of my Tubi watches. We do Tubi Tuesday themes. And then also once a week over on TikTok, just follow the Cinema Guys TikTok at the Cinema Guys. I do 3 Tubi picks every week for what you can watch. All right, so it is now August, and June and July, like I said, we did the Summer of Tubi, and I watched 45 films total. I'm going to start at the bottom, work my way up, because, I always like to end on a high note. So first up on the lowlights for what I watched is Dangerous Worry Dolls. While serving time in a brutal woman's detention center, Eva wishes away her troubles to a set of tiny worry dolls. The dolls crawl in your ear at night, and soon Eva becomes possessed. This was put out by Full Moon Features, and this is a film, like Full Moon Features, I typically love their movies. This one did not work at all for me. For the most part, it was pretty slow and dull. And the little worry doll, it was kind of funny how it climbed in her ear, and it just looked like this giant zit on her forehead that slowly started to come out. And things started happening to other people throughout this detention center. It just didn't work. It wasn't a fun watch. It was one of those, I couldn't wait for it to be over, and I cannot recommend Dangerous Worry Dolls. Next up is The Sand. After an all-night graduation beach party, a group of hungover 20-somethings awake to a beating sun and a seemingly carnivorous beach that devours anything with a heartbeat that touches the sand. So this movie should have been amazing. There are pieces of this that are great, but overall, just like the film right before it, it drug a little too much, and it just fell flat for me. This seemed like the type of movie that should have been right up my wheelhouse. Like I said, there were a couple scenes that were great, but overall, I did not enjoy my time with The Sand. Next, we have Camp Wedding. Members of a bridal party working to transform a debilitated summer camp into a beautiful wedding venue are killed off one by one. Now, there is one thing that I hated more than anything in this movie, and that is these characters were texting each other back and forth, and the text would pop up on the screen, but then there was a voiceover of that character reading that exact text to us, and I hated it. None of these characters were likable. I did not care about any of these characters, and as we moved along, I just wanted it to end. It was just dull. Anytime they started texting, I hated it. And like I said, I didn't like any characters, so I cannot recommend Camp Wedding. All right, we're down to our final two on our bottoms. First one is Christmas Craft Fair Massacre. A holiday craft fair is ground zero for a coven of Satan worshippers who stalk and kidnap a group of locals in their attempt to create a satanic nativity scene with occult spells and grisly slayings. I would like to know where all these grisly slayings are, because there aren't very many in it. This movie was not good at all. I give low-budget horror movies benefit of the doubt, because these filmmakers are really trying to get their visions made, and a lot of the time it's budgetary reasons that they have to cut corners. Acting is usually not the best, but this was just straight up just bad. I couldn't even start to explain to you everything that happened in this film. It was not good. There was nothing good about this film, and the poster was cool, and I think that's kind of what drew me to it, but Christmas Craft Fair Massacre was a complete dud for me. I did not like it at all. All right, that leaves us to the very bottom for what I watched on Tubi these past 2 months for the Summer of Tubi. And it is actually a Tubi original titled Lila. A husband takes his family on a getaway to escape the distractions of society in order to complete his first book. While on the trip, he fights to retain focus and sanity after multiple visits from mysterious strangers who seem to know him all too well. When the husband is finally pushed to the edge of insanity, his wife's intentions come into question over a secret she is willing to do anything to protect. Over on Letterboxd, my review for this just said, "What the heck did I just watch?" Because by the time I got to the end of this, I don't know what was going on. There were so many jumps of a lake, a forest, a whole bunch of different things. Like it would go like, oh, here's a beautifully set up shot to, okay, now we're going to cut to some other location. And you're just like, what is going on? And it failed on every level. It was just not good, not fun to watch, and very dull, boring, and I did not enjoy it at all. I will not recommend you check out Lila at all. Definitely, if you see it, skip it. Let's turn it around. Let's move to the top and go to the highlights for the Summer of Tubi. First up is The Nest from 1987. Roaches have never tasted flesh until now. She's just an appetizer. Horrifying shocker as a biological experiment goes haywire when meat-eating mutant roaches invade an island community, terrorizing a peaceful New England fishing village and hideously butchering its citizens. I really enjoyed this movie. I enjoy a good bug movie with practical work. This was done in 1987, so it was full practical work, and it was just very enjoyable. A great bug movie. absolutely would recommend checking out The Nest. Now on to Antiviral from Brandon Cronenberg. In a blackly satirical near future, a thriving industry sells celebrity illness to their obsessed fans. Employee Sid March's attempt to exploit the system backfire when they involve him in a potentially deadly mystery. Now, just like Brandon Cronenberg's other films, Possessor, Infinity Pool, this is another kind of mind trip. Very much so like his father, David Cronenberg, does. They're very much on body horror. They're very much on mind trip and really messing with you and making you think. And this was no different. This was one of his earlier films, but this was absolutely great. I love all of Brandon Cronenberg's movies that I have seen and would recommend checking out Antiviral. Up next is probably the biggest downer, especially on this list, and that is Eden Lake. Refusing to let anything spoil their romantic weekend break, a young couple confront a gang of youths with terrifyingly brutal consequences. So this stars Kelly Riley that you would know from Yellowstone and Michael Fassbender. And this movie is a bit of a hard watch. Like it pushes you to the edge. You feel the fear that Kelly Riley's character is going through in this whole situation that leads up to this ending that just after you watch it, you're just like, you need to watch something happy because you're going to be angry. You're going to be upset. This movie was very well crafted, very well acted, and really good. I would suggest Eden Lake, but just know it is a bit of a hard watch in some places. Up next, we're going to add some sharks in The Shallows. When Nancy is surfing on a secluded beach, she finds herself on the feeding ground of a great white shark. Though she is stranded only 200 yards from shore, survival proves to be the ultimate test of wills, requiring all of Nancy's ingenuity, resourcefulness, and fortitude. This stars Blake Lively, and it is a fairly simple movie. It's her stranded out in the water fighting a shark. There aren't very many other people in this movie, so she has to really carry this movie on her own. I feel like she did a great job. It is fairly suspenseful and some good action sequences throughout leading up to this ending. I really enjoyed The Shallows. Over next is The Midnight Man. A girl and her friends find a game in the attic that summon a creature known as the Midnight Man, who uses their worst fears against them. This one was surprisingly good and surprisingly gory. There is one death in this movie that, holy crap, I did not expect what happened to happen. It happens at the beginning, but it really set me up for this film of like, ooh, okay, we're in this. And I really enjoyed it. I would have loved to see more of the Midnight Man himself, but I did really enjoy the suspense of that and what was going to happen next leading up to this ending of this creature preying on the fears of these people. I did really enjoy The Midnight Man. There's Nothing Out There from 1991. When a horror film buff tries to warn his friends, spending spring break in a house in the woods of impending danger, they scoff at him. That is until a huge mutant frog starts to pick them off one by one. So this has a lot of Scream vibes in it. Came out before Scream, but you have the horror film buff who is, quoting off things that happen in horror movies like, oh, this is set up to, this is not a good situation. This is not good for this. We're out in the cabins. We're by ourselves. We're secluded. We're this. Like it it sets itself up for a horror movie. You have him pointing these things out, and then this creature comes after them. It's full 90s. It has some great practical effects, some good deaths. I would definitely recommend checking out There's Nothing Out There. All right, the next one was a total surprise, and it's probably the most ridiculous film on the list this month, and that is Pool Boy: Drowning Out the Fury. This stars Kevin Sorbo and Danny Trejo, a movie about making a movie about a man returning to California to be a pool cleaner after an eternity of fighting in Vietnam. But it's been taken over by Mexicans, and one of them murdered his family. He settles it the only way he knows how. So, this movie is ridiculous. It is set up kind of mockumentary style. The, in quotes, director talking about what happens, and it is silly as silly can be. And I absolutely had a blast with this, laughing out loud the whole time with the ridiculousness of this, and would highly recommend watching Pool Boy: Drowning Out the Fury, because it is so funny. Another Tubi original, but this time it makes it to the highlights, and that is She Came from the Woods. In 1987, a group of counselors accidentally unleash a decades-old evil on the last night of summer camp. There's a lot of cliches in this movie about summer camps and summer camp killers and everything else. Like, it doesn't rewrite the script in summer camp horror, but I like summer camp horror, and this one just worked for me. First you said it in the 80s, and they did a good job of giving you that feel of you would have rented this from the video store in the 80s, and it was very enjoyable. I liked it, and that's why it made it to my highlights. Recommend checking out She Came from the Woods. Okay, we're up to our top two. First one, Full Moon Features gets to make it up into the highlights after being on the other end, and that is Trancers from 1984. A gruff bounty hunter travels back in time to the 1980s Los Angeles to stop a twisted criminal who can transform people into zombie-like creatures, aka Trancers. So he's a Trancer hunter, and he has to go back in time. And the only way he can go back in time is if he has a relative in the same time. He basically jumps into their body. He goes back. This stars Tim Thomerson and Helen Hunt. And I had always had the Trancer films on my list. There are 6 of them. Plus, there's one called 1.5 or 1.5 that takes place in between 1 and 2, but it came out many years later. I've always had the Trancer movies on my list because I love Full Moon, but I've just never watched them. So I decided to jump right in. I've watched the first 3 plus 1.5, and I am enjoying the series thus far. Highly recommend this sci-fi film with horror undertones to it, because these Trancers are like zombies. So you got like that little bit of a horror element, even though it is mostly sci-fi. I would definitely say go check out Trancers. All right, here we go. The top movie for the Summer of Tubi. The top movie I watched during the Summer of Tubi was The Girl with All the Gifts from 2016. In the future, a strange fungus has changed nearly everyone into a thoughtless, flesh-eating monster. When a scientist and a teacher find a girl who seems to be immune to the fungus, they all begin a journey to save humanity. This has Glenn Close and Gemma Arterton in it, and this is a fantastic film. I think if you're a fan of The Last of Us, this is a similar kind of story to that, and it is absolutely great. It is well acted, a great story. The child actor, Senia Nanua, was so good in this film. And I cannot speak highly enough of The Girl with All the Gifts. Go watch it. Well, there you go. There is my recap of the Summer of Tubi, my watches from June and July. I always keep a list on Letterboxd. I will link that below so you can go check out all of the movies I watched over the Summer of Tubi. And this is going to be something that I do once a month here on the Old Man Brad podcast. It's going to be one of the series. This Tales from Tubi. I'm having a Tubi Tuesday with Brad mini review coming out very soon. Jason from Binge Movies wanted me to watch the Tubi original Deadly Dilf. So I watched that, and that review will be coming very, very soon. August is going to be a great month on Tubi. There are a lot of great movies coming out. A bunch of brand new Tubi originals that could be good. A couple animated ones like Doomsday Brothers on 8/20, Millennial Hunter on August 13th. There's a shark action movie called Blind Waters, a Tubi original coming out. And then so many other great films that hit Tubi this month. Like on my picks, there was True Lies, Pan's Labyrinth, one of my favorite comedies, Bubble Boy, G.I. Jane, Final Destination, Jeepers Creepers, the Lego movie Blue Crush. I really enjoy that movie quite a bit. And so many more other movies. Tubi, this is why Tubi is the best streaming service in my opinion. If you're unfamiliar with Tubi and you're listening to this, you need to jump on. It's completely free. Go check out Tubi. They have a lot of great stuff, especially on the horror side. So many horror movies and other films. I hope you enjoyed the Summer of Tubi. Can't wait to do it again next year. But now we're knee deep into horror. Make sure you watch online for that. And remember, Tuesdays aren't just for tacos. Talk to you later, everybody.